Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Wonderful. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk to you about a topic called Smart Startups, what every entrepreneur needs to know. Before we start, I've got a copy of the book here. The person who's the most enthusiastic in the audience will get the copy of the book. It's my first time presenting this way. I love to have contact with the audience. It's a bit difficult with the light, but I'll do my best. What is it that you wish you would have known? This is the question we asked 18 founders that actually graduated from Harvard Business School. They all went to Harvard Business School, that is known for entrepreneurship in the meantime. They started a business, some of them grew them to unicorns, and we actually contacted them to ask this one question. What is it that you wish you would have known that you didn't know? Why? Jim and I, Jim is my co-writer, we went to Harvard Business School, graduated in '91, started our career in consulting, and then became entrepreneurs. Jim is still an entrepreneur. I'm more in VC kind of activity at the moment. But we've both been there, done that. We also were angels for multiple years in New York. And we knew, like nobody else, that the road of entrepreneurship is really harsh, that 90% of startups fail. And that with all the advice out there, still not much change. So we wanted to get to the core, to the bottom of it, and really ask people, what is it that you wish you would have known that you were not prepared for? What did we learn? What we summarized in the book as 21 lessons or pearls of wisdom, okay? Things that VCs won't tell you, things that you won't get taught in school, and I don't think things that are written anywhere else in any kind of book. To go through these lessons, I am gonna take one example of the founders that we interviewed in the book. If you read the book, it's obviously about more than that, but I'm gonna bring it to life with one of these examples. So meet Jen and Jenny. Jen and Jenny started at business school in 2007, became best friends, and graduated in 2009. While at business school, Jenny's sister, Becky, got invited to a wedding, and she needed a dress for the wedding. This is 2009, actually a bit before that. She had a couple of dresses in her closet, but like most women here will know, you don't wear the same dress twice, and it's not like men, it's not a tuxedo, you need to look good, etc. So she needed to buy a dress of $2,000. She's a student. Becky is a student. Here comes, in 2009, Rent the Runway. That's where Jenny and Jen got the idea to create Rent the Runway. Fast forward to today, Rent the Runway is a subscription model to rent clothes and accessories, okay? It's present in all over the US. It was founded in 2009. Maybe the concept of renting female clothes is now something standard for some of you here, but I can tell you in 2009, it wasn't. What trajectory have they made? Today, they have 165,000 subscribers in the US. They have onboarded 750 brands, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all of them. And for each item they carry, at least clothes, they have 13 sizes of each item for the women that are very skinny and the one that are larger. In terms of how they did financially, they raised $541 million. They became a unicorn, so more than $1 billion value in 2020. And they IPO'd, they went public in 2021. So I'm going to use this example to go through some of the lessons, but again, the book touches on all of the other ones. and it's not limited to this. First topic is the team. And the point that we heard over and over again is there is no one answer to the team. I wanted to talk about this today because everybody takes it for granted, and I've heard it not so long ago by a VC here in Belgium who was on a webinar, and he said your perfect team is a threesome. You need a CEO, a CTO, and a CMO, a CRO, or whatever that third person is. But that's the three-headed team you need, and if you don't have that, we as a VC have got some kind of problem with you because this is perfect. Well, in our case, we saw absolutely everything. So we saw a team of 5 people recruited by headhunters. They became a unicorn, by the way. We saw a solo founder. He became a unicorn as well. He was alone, okay? A married couple, something investors absolutely hate. They're still in business and doing extremely well. A dad, a mom and her son, all of that worked, okay? So we saw it all, and there was no one answer to the team. In the case of Rent a Runway, it was Jen and Jenny, 2 best friends, met at business school, had a problem with Jenny's sister Becky, and decided to pursue an idea and found a business. What is more important than the number of people and their roles is actually what they share. They should have passion for what they do. In the case of Rent a Runway, passion for fashion. They should have a huge amount of resilience. If you're not resilient, you shouldn't become an entrepreneur because you're going to go through good times, but very bad times. So you need a huge dose of resilience. And especially if you're a team, you need skills that are complementary. You don't want exactly the same profile. You want people to be good at one thing and people to be good at another thing. And on the topic of skills, something that came up over and over again is it is not to be confused with industry expertise. As a matter of fact, Jenny and Jen had no expertise in fashion. They had a passion for fashion. They loved shopping. They understood the problem of Becky, etc. But they didn't know anything about fashion. So before starting, they actually consulted with some industry experts. And this was the first one. Some of you might recognize her. She's Belgian, Diane van Furstenberg, who lives in New York. Jenny and Jen went to Diane and said, what do you think of this idea? We want to start something where we get brands to give us clothes and we'll rent it out to women. And Diane said, it's a terrible idea. Nobody will want to do this. It will never work. Many other brands said that, but Jenny and Jen were convinced, resilient, and pursued. Industry expertise can play against you. Many of the models we saw, actually the biggest one, the most disruptive ones, were actually founded and pushed and managed by people that had no industry expertise. The problem when you know the industry too well is actually that you don't dare to do it anymore, okay? And Jenny and Jen were a bit naive in the beginning, but they believed in their idea. They pushed it despite the fact that the initial feedback from the people in the industry was to drop it. The other thing on team that is paramount and that nobody talks about is shared values. From the minute you don't go alone, you'd better go with somebody you wouldn't mind being married to. That's the extent to which you need to share the values, okay? You're going to be working like hell. It's going to be a tough road, ups and downs and so forth. And so more important than how many of you are and the roles, etc., having values that are shared is absolutely paramount. Second topic I want to talk about is product market fit. For the entrepreneurs here in the room, it's a billion-dollar question. If you find product market fit, you can go for it, you can scale, you're fine. Well, the point here is product market fit is not the same as revenues. What most, it's a big question to know how and when do you know you found product market fit. What most entrepreneurs think is, let me code the whole thing, let me build the product, okay? Let me generate some revenues, okay? And by the time I've done that, I prove the entire world I've got product market fit. Well, it doesn't work that way because I can tell you out of experience, very often this comes to a stop because it wasn't product market fit. It is easy to generate some initial revenues, but you basically need to go beyond that. You need to go beyond the warm introductions you have in the beginning and actually prove that there is true fit. How did Jen and Jenny do it? They actually said, okay, it's very simple. We're going to test if customers want to do this. They went to college campuses. There were still students at Harvard Business School. They looked in their own closets and said, oh, this is a dress I would wear to a party and so forth. And the only thing they bought was a rack, a rack where you... Now, they went to the campuses a couple of weeks before a party, and they put the rack with the clothes that they were their own and borrowed, and asked women, would you want to rent this instead of buy it? They had no website, no marketing, no product, no coding, no stores. They had a rack and their own dresses. But the feedback was amazing. Everything was gone. The women loved it. They didn't need to buy a dress. They just took it, okay? And so the point is, proving product market fit is not generating revenues. It is validating customer demand. I work day to day with entrepreneurs. A lot of them don't get this. They think the revenues is proving the fit. It's not true. It should be the validation of customer demand. And that's exactly what Jenny and Jen did over and over again. Every time they would develop their business, they would take the same mini steps, not invest in a full product, not invest in marketing or whatever, just go to the core of what needed to be proven. In this case, they're ready to rent. And by the way, what they did that was very smart is they filmed the reactions of the women, of the students. They knew that down the road they would need to raise money. And they knew that most VCs are men. And so they thought it would be smart to show the reactions on a video so that men would really understand how good this was. And it worked. Now, you don't need a product, but the illusion of a product. We have fascinating example in the book about people that supposedly have a model like Rent a Runway that only works at scale, but manage to prove customer demand without the product, just with something that gave the illusion there was a product there, and that proves and that allows customer to understand what you're about to offer. What you want to get is the feedback. And this is one of the messages we heard from absolutely everybody we talked to. What they had learned, what they wished they would have known is once you get the feedback, good feedback is not good enough. You actually want feedback that blows you away. This changed my life. I would do it again tomorrow. I love it. Please come back, etc. It's only then that you know you've got product market fit. My third topic is, let's assume you found product market fit, you start scaling. Well, all of the founders we talked to actually told us that they hated scaling, that it's a grind and that it was very difficult. The problem with scaling is it's a different ball game. I saw the book 0 to 1 in the bookshelves over there. Everybody knows going from 0 to 1 is one thing, 1 to 100 is another, and 100 to whatever is something else. Once you start scaling, it becomes a different animal. And one of the founders, this is not from Rent a Runway, but one of the founders summarized it extremely well. He said the problem is the sum of the parts. Every single part or step is easy and manageable, but it's the sheer volume that makes it absolutely unmanageable. And as a founder, you never accept this. You always think, okay, it's all about execution. I found product market fit. I've got my things worked out. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I've got systems, I've got HR, I've managed people, and so forth. And then what it becomes, managing chaos. Whatever you do, there is no success formula for this. Maybe Odoo helps, by the way, at this stage. And I've not been paid to say that. But so, scaling is a grind. It makes it very, very difficult for a lot of founders. And by the way, for many founders, it's a good time to basically take on a different role because it's not their favorite activity anymore. But what we learned about scaling that I found fascinating, it goes beyond that. It is that scaling gives you the opportunity to really define your competitive advantage. And it's tough to anticipate, learn and build as you grow. But let me go back to the example of Jen and Jenny. When they started, they thought our competitive advantage is going to be, we're going to sign on all these brands, get all these sizes, and we're fine. And that's going to be it. They didn't really know, and one of the investors and early board members helped them, but what became really a competitive advantage was the logistics behind. Think about it, 165,000 subscribers. You need to get, on a monthly basis, dresses to these subscribers, pick them up again, clean them, etc., etc. So it's a logistical nightmare. And believe it or not, in the beginning, they didn't think that that was going to become their competitive advantage. As a matter of fact, they wanted to outsource dry cleaning. Now, they realized dry cleaning was absolutely critical. You can't rent a dress unless it is spotless. And so they became the largest dry cleaning operation on the planet. Okay? But they took that advantage to the next level. They hired people for sniffing and for spotting. And think about it, that's something they learned as they went, but they realized even when you dry clean a dress, if it still smelled to a perfumes or body odor or whatever, you can't rent it, it doesn't work, or it has a little spot. So they basically have very skilled people to sniff and spot. Another part of their competitive advantage they didn't see come was the data. Of course they've got a lot of data. They've got 165,000 monthly subscribers. Now, that helped them to define their KPIs, and one of them was maximize clothing utilization. Every single item that they have, they need to turn as much as they can. But what they had not anticipated is that the design brands, the Gucci's and the whatever of this world, actually could use that data too. Who likes this kind of shirt in what color and how often is it worn and so forth? And it became an additional competitive advantage for them. Scaling is a new game. It's basically managing the business behind the business, not the design brands, but the logistics in case of Rent the Runway. It gives you the opportunity to find your competitive advantage that very often is something different than what you thought it was. I've got 2 more topics for you. I hope I can go through them. Culture, one of my favorites. Culture is your company DNA. It's the glue of the company. Now, when you talk to founders about culture, you get this kind of answer. Yeah, culture, yeah, that's fluffy, that's, And I've put some words, some core values behind the reception desk, and everybody sees that every morning when they come in, and that's the culture we have because I've written it on the wall. Based on our discussions, everybody agreed that culture is paramount. And we basically came to the definition that culture is not something fluffy, but culture is what people do when you're not around. Think about that. What people are going to do when you can't sit next to them and you want people to do actually something that you would do yourself, okay? The other point about that, if it is people, what people do when you're not around, you will have a culture no matter what. It's going to happen because you're going to get people, okay? So in the case of all of the founders, the point about culture that surprised me was that everybody agreed that one of the things they wish they would have known or had done is to start very early building their culture. As soon as 10 employees, maximum 30. If you haven't done it by then, you've got a massive problem. In the case of Rent the Runway, totally at the beginning, when they had a website, they put their core values on the website. They called it the dress code. But Jen and Jenny also understood that their own behavior as founder was going to influence the culture. Do you send emails at night or during the weekend? You have an office at a different floor and never mingle with everybody. That influences your culture, okay? And so they wanted a specific culture around the core values that I just showed, but they understood that every single person that joined the team would basically have to adhere to these cultures. And so what they did, and this is a quote from them, we hired at a pace that was fast, but not blitz fast scaling. So it was quite useful for Jen and I to interview and meet, I'd say, pretty much everyone for a long time before we chose to hire them. This is something a lot of founders learned the hard way. They dropped recruiting, it went berserk, and months or years later, they went back to recruiting because of a culture issue. At Rent a Runway, as they were growing, they also created tiger teams because they realized that as the company was becoming bigger, whenever they would bring somebody from the outside or whenever they wanted something fast and innovative, they needed to have a smaller team, and they literally called them tiger teams. The point here is we learned that you need to hire and fire not only for skills and IQ, but especially for culture. And the point is, if you don't do that, if you hire only for skills, I mean, you can bring people skills, but if you don't hire for for values and culture, you cannot change people's value. And that's a critical thing that you want to take into account. Culture will evolve over time as you grow. Tiger Teams is an example thereof. I have 1 minute left, and I'm just going to touch on this topic. Governance is underrated. When you talk about boards and governance, most founders will say, oh, that's a burden. I have no time. I'm busy with this, that, and so forth, and I can't spend any time on my board, okay? And they end up with a board like this, because every time you raise funds, somebody gets on your board. And if you don't do anything about it, you're going to get white male on your board. I'm a big fan of diversity. This is not a very diverse board. At Rent a Runway, we always had board meetings. For us, as first-time founders, they picked themselves an entrepreneur as one of our board members, and so we actually viewed all these meetings as a chance to learn from him. This is a critical point. You have an opportunity with your board, and you should leverage it. Like a top sporter gets a coach, you can start with a coach that can become an independent member, but shape your board. Your board is an opportunity. Don't wait to be shaped for you. Shape it early on, be in control, and get the board to support you. Voila, this is what I had to say. I've got 1 copy of the book. Who wants it? You want it? Here you go.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the conference. We will do quickly a Q&A. So you can ask your question. You can just scan here the QR code, and then I will ask the question here.
Oui, pas de problème. Oui, super. J'ai essayé de garder les 20 minutes, c'était pas évident, j'ai dû parler vite. Hein. Et j'avais pas j'ai pas fait attention et j'avais pas les slides suivants chaque fois, donc c'était... Ouais. Bon, enfin bon, ouais.
Ça prend un peu de temps, enfin tout le monde écrit en fait.
Tout le monde écrit.
Pas tout le monde, mais...
So there is a first start of question. What about the concurrence?
What about the concurrence? That's a very generic question, but yeah, I mean, concurrence is not bad. Competition is not bad. It's actually, if you get into a business and nobody has done nothing in that business, it exists, but it's rare, okay? And so most of the time you will have competition, and that's not bad. I mean, what investors don't like is what they call a red ocean, where there are so many players that it becomes very, very difficult to have a competitive advantage. I don't know if that answers the question, but the question was fairly open.
I will go to another question. What is the difference between a good and a great entrepreneur? And do you teach somewhere?
Okay, I'll start with the second part. I teach somewhere now and then, but I'm not a fixed professor or whatever. And then what is the difference between a good and a great entrepreneur? That's a great question. I think to be a great entrepreneur, you need to be a little bit crazy, a little bit delusional, really convinced about your thing, not let yourself be knocked down. But you need to be, I'm convinced that you need to be multifaceted. So you need to take care about things like culture. You need to, a big part of the book goes about fundraising. You need to be smart enough to develop relationships with investors over time and not get up one morning and say, okay, now I've got 3 months to raise funds. I'm going to send emails and so forth. So I think you need to have quite a bit of EQ to be a great entrepreneur.
What's the most basic error an entrepreneur can make?
The most basic error, I think there are a few. Mistake the science of product market fit. I've seen so many entrepreneurs go back to the drawing board multiple times because they grow and then it stops and I think the team in the beginning, I have some people contacting me with that myth and saying, do you know a co-founder for me? I'm like, you must be kidding me. How would I know a co-founder for you? Go and figure out for yourself if you need one and go and find it. I think for some people, stay on too long. The thing about 0 to 1 is not the same as 1 to 100. And that can actually destroy the business.
Thank you. There are actually a lot of questions left, but we have to close it now. But if you have any question, don't hesitate to come here and ask a question directly after the conference. And thank you very much.